Mr. Henry Selick, best known as the stop-motion animator genius and director of The Nightmare Before Christmas, James and the Giant Peach, and Coraline, first studied animation at the Californian Institute of the Arts, and then moved on to Disney as a trainee animator. Working by day at Disney, Selick would produce his first animation, a Mr. Toad pencil test. Selick would take drawing classes at night, where he would meet a young up-and-comer by the name of Tim Burton. Selick worked as an apprentice on the featurette called The Small One, and would continue to master his craft under the tutelage of Disney legend Eric Larson, one of the Disney's original 9 old men from the 20s and 30s. Selick would contribute work on The Fox and the Hound, and upon receiving his first grant, would produce his debut short entitled Seepage, utilizing life-sized cutouts, stop-motion figures, and cell animation. The film took 3 years to complete, and in 1986, Selick and Tim Burton formed the company Selick-Burton Projects, where Tim Burton could direct episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents and Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theatre, while Selick could focus on doing animation. In 1988, Tim Burton left to work on Beetlejuice, and Selick renamed the studio Selick Projects. During this period, Selick Projects produced commercials, and Selick landed the gig designing and directing the iconic MTV ID inserts. In 1990, a series of short films entitled Slow Bob in the Lower Dimensions was proposed for MTV under the banner of Selick Projects, again combining the techniques of a cutout animation, stop motion, and live action. In September 1992, Tim Burton returned to Selick Studios, renamed it Skellington Productions, and sold it to Disney. The first film produced by Skellington Productions was to be The Nightmare Before Christmas, a project based on art created by Tim Burton 10 years earlier, now rescued from the Disney archives upon Burton's ascendancy to A-list director. Selick would say, "It was originally conceived by Tim Burton in a very simple format as a TV special." Peter Schneider, who was the head of Disney Animation at the time, had told Selick, "It's a gift to Tim Burton. We don't really care that much whether it succeeds or not. It's to get him to come back to the studio." It was an odd kind of knowledge to have, Selick says, but it really took the pressure away. Selick was offered the director's chair, and upon its completion, the Oscar-nominated film, with its spooky yet lovable characters and catchy sing-along musical numbers, became a hit with audiences and continues to thrive as a cult classic. Its success would afford Selick the chance to bring Roald Dahl's James and the Giant Peach to life before Skellington Productions would close for good. Selick's third feature was 2001's Monkey Bone, a live-action stop-motion adaptation of an underground comic, and then, in 2004, after developing stop-motion animation on Wes Anderson's The Life Aquatic, Selick joined the Oregon-based animation studio Leica as the supervising director for the feature film development. Selick directed his first computer-generated animation film, the award-winning short film Moon Girl, and 2009 saw Selick adapt Neil Gaiman's Coraline into a stunning, full-length, stereoscopic stop-motion animation. Coraline was a critical and commercial hit, with a global take just shy of $125 million. In 2010, Selick joined with Pixar and the Walt Disney Company in a long-term contract to exclusively produce stop-motion films. This not only returned Selick to his original roots, but also reunited Selick with numerous former friends and co-animators. In January 2011, Selick, together with his 150-strong crew of animators, artists, puppeteers, and camera operators, set up shop in a vacant former chocolate factory in San Francisco. The space would now serve as a studio and base for all the team's future endeavors. His new studio, called Cinderbiter Productions, was self-described as a new stop-motion company whose mandate is to make great, scary films for young'uns with a small, tight-knit crew who watch each other's backs. Selick and Cinderbiter's first film under this deal, a project under the working title Shademaker, was greenlit and scheduled for an October 2013 release. The crew was to also include celebrated production designer Lou Romano, a veteran of over 50 titles, including Pixar's Up, The Incredibles, and Monsters, Inc., and Eric Leighton would co-direct. Leighton's previous credits included Coraline and The Nightmare Before Christmas, and he'd been a collaborator of Selick since the Slow Bob days. The concept was an original screenplay and story by Selick, later to be retitled from Shademaker to The Shadow King. The official synopsis would read, "The Shadow King is a deliciously magical tale about 9-year-old New York orphan Hap, who hides his fantastically weird hands with long fingers from a cruel world. But when a living shadow girl teaches him to make amazing hand shadows that come to life, his hands become incredible weapons in a shadow war against a ravenous monster bent on killing Hap's brother, Richard, and ultimately destroying New York." These storyboards by artist Andrew J. Ross outline a scene in which the orphaned brothers, Richard and Hap, discover their new home, the Fargo, and meet the caretaker, Mr. Darcy, who lives in the cellar. These images show the bigger set pieces that would make up the New York landscape. Here we see sculptures and experimental shots. The animator in these pictures is Kevin Parry, who worked on the project between 2011 and 2012. Sculpts of the central characters were fashioned by the multi-talented artist Damon Bard, and designs by Heidi Smith, Katie Wu, and Tony Fucilli, and additional sculpting from designer Andre Blasick. Artist and renowned model maker Katie Sabika released pictures of the stunning work she produced during the pre-production of The Shadow King. Lou Romano would later put up an extraordinary blog entry showcasing some of the artwork he produced on The Shadow King between 2010 and 2012. In August 2012, the news would break that Disney had abruptly shut down production, despite the progress already made, at the cost of $50 million. James A. Rizzullo, Disney's chief financial officer, revealed at a gathering of Wall Street analysts that the company would take the $50 million write-down on the chin. Rizzullo did not specify what prompted the movie write-down, saying only, "After looking at it, we've decided we don't want to continue with it." Rizzullo wouldn't be pressed on the reasons as to why, but the truth is, Rizzullo was only the messenger. The decision to completely derail and cancel the project was solely that of the new Disney chairman, Mr. Alan Horn. The Selick deal was made under the previous regime, chaired by Rick Ross, and now things had changed. The remit now was to focus on pre-existing franchises in order to make the maximum amount of money from merchandise and brand tie-ins. Retailers were said to have been conservative in ordering products tied to the Avengers after Iron Man 2 products fared poorly, and so now the worry was, will kids be buying Shadow King merchandise? It was decided, no, it's too dark. Kids like colourful things, so make more colourful things. And so the trigger was pulled. 150 people lost their jobs, and the studio's attention would divert to promoting the release of Finding Nemo in 3D and Wreck-It Ralph. The news was heartbreaking. It is often said that business is the enemy of creativity, and this decision is one that would enforce that notion more than any other. Lou Romano would say, "Working on this stop-motion animated feature was one of the most creative experiences of my career. Though the project was cancelled, I learned a great deal, and I am proud of what our small art department helped create." Artists would eventually begin to release their contributions to the project online. We saw paintings and thumbnails from Mingjue, Helen, Chen. Katie Wu would release some of the brilliant illustrations and art she produced during the pre-production. One crew member would contact the Animation Guild blog, saying, "I journeyed up to the shoot several weeks ago, and things appeared to be going well. The project was happening in the industrial warehouse section of San Francisco, and the crew was up and engaged. I have no idea why Henry's project was shut down so deep into production. But some person in a higher level of authority must have seen the dailies and said, no.
I had a project called The Shadow King that was being done with Pixar and Disney, and it got shut down. We were in production, but they couldn't support my vision. They loved Coraline, and I presented and developed an original idea of mine. But you know, I absolutely have learned that I'm a collaborator, but as director, I get to choose if the idea goes in or not. When there's an executive more powerful than me forcing me to do something, in every case, it breaks the movie and can ultimately destroy it. My feeling is like, give me this much money, you know, we agree on what this film's going to be, and you're welcome to give me notes and have input, but let me decide, and you'll have a better film that'll be more successful. And when it goes the other way, it doesn't work.
Meanwhile, Variety reported that sources close to the production said from a creative and scheduling standpoint, the pick wasn't where it needed to be to meet its planned release date, and Disney decided not to continue production as a result. Steve Hullett of the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees would say that Disney had contacted the union to inform them of the impending shutdown. Hullett wrote, "I have no idea why Henry's project was shut down so deep into production. Whatever the actual reason, we're saddened to see so many animation professionals lose their jobs of a feature that appeared to be in full flight. Here's hoping that Mr. Selick sets the feature up someplace else and folks can continue working." Upon Disney's departure, Leica, after the successful collaboration on Coraline, was considering taking over the new project after Selick was given permission to complete the film elsewhere. Now officially titled The Shadow King, the director would screen a few minutes of footage that had already been shot on the incomplete project. The following scenes were co-directed by Selick and Eric Leighton, with work by Damon Bard and the late Dave Osmand.
Good. Aw. I know. What? Richard's right. I'll never make shadows with these.
Hap! Where are you? What are you doing?
Cards.
Bring me my cape.
Cape?
Ah, thank you. Oh, children of the night, what music they make.
Miss Fern sure burns a lot of wood.
Maybe she's gonna cook us alive.
Don't joke. She looked way scary last night.
Come on. She's just a rich old lady.
Richard!
You're late. So, you're the rebel-rousers.
Rabbit trousers?
You deaf? I said rabble-rousers. It's a fine salute, you know.
Darcy's lying, Richard. About the girl. She's real, but she is really tricky.
I'm getting worried, Hap. I mean, we're supposed to see Cottee today.
Are you even listening to me?
Gotta get around that doorman. Close one. Whew.
Huh?
There was hope the project would be picked up. Selick would try to revive production of the film by shopping the project at the European Film Market in Berlin. The director would team up with Beasts of the Southern Wild producer Josh Penn and enlist K5 International to represent the film's international rights. A proposed cast of actors was revealed to include Pamela Adlon, Brendan Gleeson, Jeffrey Tambor, Catherine O'Hara, and Jaden Betts as Hap. Travis Knight, who runs Leica, unfortunately couldn't figure out budgeting to pull this project in and had to pass. Selick, with a heavy heart, would then send an internal memo to his crew informing them the project was over. Devastatingly, the project wasn't picked up on the international market. Production would not resume and the puppets and sets would be destroyed. As bitter pills go, the Shadow King's cancellation is a particularly tough one to swallow. There were literally no genuine or satisfactory reasons as to why the Shadow King's production would shut down. When you see how much love, craft, and creativity went into the work that had already been completed, it's fair to say that the decision from high up to simply scrap everything is somewhat of a fear-based atrocity. It is also further evidence of how deeply out of touch with the audience's executives tend to be when underestimating and thinking on behalf of the audiences. The crew would move on to other projects, and Selick is currently working hard on Windle and Wild for a 2021 Netflix release, in which two demon brothers, voiced by Keegan-Michael Key and Jordan Peele, escape the underworld and find themselves in a town where they must evade a demon duster teenager, Kat, who is trying to destroy them. Years later, at the Montreal Stop Motion Festival, Selick would reflect on the experience with mixed emotions, saying, "Let me just step back for a second and say that I never set out to have a Hollywood career, and whatever bad experiences I've had, which are plenty, the good ones outweigh them. If I only got to direct Nightmare and Coraline, I'd still be pretty damn happy because I got to take stop motion places it had never been. It's easy to bellyache when things haven't worked out, but honestly, I'm very grateful for the project I've gotten to work on, the success that we have had with those projects, and as for the rest of it, it doesn't really matter that much." And that concludes the story of Henry Selick's The Shadow King. Thanks for listening.